Today, every day, small cap investors visit AGORACOM knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. AGORACOM, find your dream. Welcome to Beyond the AGM, a production of AGORACOM, in which we talk to company executives about the information they'll be presenting at their AGMs in a little more detail. With us on this segment for St. George's Echo Mining is Vilhjalmsson. He's the president and CEO of St. George's Echo Mining, as many of you well know, and Enrico de Cesare. He's president and CEO of St. George's Metallurgy, which is a subsidiary of St. George, specializing in research and development. Now, the topic that we're going to be talking about right now in this segment is the company's lithium processing technology, the big picture, and where we're going. Gents, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First question, guys, before we get into the technology, let's talk about if you can elaborate on the philosophy behind the company's lithium processing technology. Why are you doing this when there are other lithium processing technologies already out there?
Well, as the name of St. George Eco Mining, it's a bit self-explanatory, but the philosophy of the project is to maximize and maximize the output and reduce the green footprint of mining in general. And that can be done in so many ways. And it's a good question, because people often ask, why are you doing something that is already known? And so we are trying to take a new approach, and that's how discoveries are done, to look at it from a different angle. And we've chosen to do so from the angle of taking it in the eco-green and look at it from environmental point of view.
Okay, with that in mind then, how can it even be integrated into the, how are you guys planning to integrate into the industry? Enrico, maybe you could take that one.
So the niche that this is focused on is not the brines, which is the most common source of lithium in the market. It's focused on hard rocks and anything to do like with clays, anything hard, solid. And what we started to look at was, what is everybody doing? Is there another way of doing it? Is there a way of doing it that's greener, more selective, and lower cost? And that led to what we're at today. And we've not only focused on testing one type of ore. Every time we make an advancement, we test it on other sources, because what we're focused on is making an ecologically friendly, low-cost producer of lithium for the hard rock industry. We've mentioned this before, but I'll re-mention it. When you can do a selective leach and primarily remove like lithium, and your byproducts or waste are fertilizer, which helps you recover your chemicals, you're not only ecologically better or eco mining, as the name represents, but you're also a lower cost producer because you recover your costs.
How, for people at home who, obviously don't know the science behind both the traditional approach and the company's, new lithium processing technology, how revolutionary is the part you just talked about, Enrico? How different is that from what's going on out there already?
Well, most of the projects that you hear about in the news are sulfuric acid based, and in our case, we're nitric acid based. And everybody's used fertilizer for their grass, and you have phosphate and nitrates in it, and you don't think about it. And then the little bag costs a lot. Well, that's what the approach we took, and what we discovered was the nitric acid was quite selective in its leaching. It really only leaches salt metals. Coincidentally, if you think about it, brines come from salt water, and the metals that get concentrated in there are typically salt metals: lithium, manganese, obviously salt, and those types of calcium are what I consider the salt metals. It tends to focus on those. And then when we collect the lithium out, what do you do with your waste? In our case, well, we're looking at value-added fertilizers.
You've got your partner, Iconic Minerals. What would be the what would be the perfect operation Nevada with Iconic if you could describe that?
Just straight off the phone. Sorry about that. So for Nevada, you know, their material leaches with this incredibly fast. Within a few minutes, you have all the lithium into solution. Each resource is going to have slightly different challenges. In Nevada's case, it's concentrating the lithium to reduce the footprint of what's going into the plant, not the rest of it. The rest is relatively simple for them, and that'll be part of the development work. What we focused on here is that in their region, so even fertilizers or byproducts could easily be distributed in Western USA as byproducts, and we can minimize the ecological footprint. All those other projects are, you know, billion-dollar plants that were being planned, and this is one way to start looking at it in a smaller capex and opex, which makes it viable. You can get going, and then you can add to it as you need.
And Vil, that's important, right? The small capex, the small opex, because so many companies, I see so many juniors with promising projects, and they say, okay, George's Gold Co. or George's whatever resource company has this, and it's great, and it's only going to cost us $1 billion to get this out of the ground, and that kills it, right? Because good luck trying to raise $1 billion and people taking on that risk with you without giving away the whole farm. So, you know, how much advantage would that be, you know, this small capex, small opex, to actually prove your point?
Now that's exactly what I think, and what Enrico was saying, and which is so clever about our approach, is that instead of focusing only on the lithium, and you focus on the byproduct as well, and using nitric acid versus sulfuric acid, and both, especially on the opex and in the capex, that can be huge savings. But when you're would be doing your feasibility studies and going to banks, and you do your bankable feasibility and take the project forward, you suddenly don't have just one income stream, which is your lithium, but you have fertilizer, you can have gypsum and other products. So suddenly, when you take together all the byproducts, they're almost the same as your lithium. So suddenly you're not just a lithium producer, but you're producing various products. And this also makes you more eco-friendly, because you're not dumping everything into the waste. You're actually looking at the holistic picture. And a lot of company actually, because they're so driven for their main metal, i.e. the lithium, that they disregard and forget about everything else instead of looking at the bigger picture. And that's where we come in. So we look at the big picture, the overall concept of what you're doing. Like Enrico said, all ore and all projects are different. But for example, what we saw with Iconic was how fast it leached, you know. And that can be a huge advantage going forward. And with all the byproducts that comes with it, it makes it much more feasible, both on the cost and the opex.
Let's get over to the shareholders who submitted questions. Thanks to all the shareholders who submitted their questions on the St. George's Verified Forum on AGORACOM. Just goes to show that the system works great when you got this kind of engagement. We got some great questions in. So there's a few of them here. So I'm going to start off with KM, who asks, can you provide information if you've received any material to process in the pilot plant?
Well, I can answer this. The material, we haven't. And the reason is the material we were expecting from South America is coming from a country that is in complete lockdown. So it's just impossible to move because of the COVID. So, however, we have our material from our Quebec resource, and that's being worked on as we speak, but not in the pilot plant because it's being prepared for that.
So question for, I'll just do my own follow-on question for KM, who probably asked that. Do you still need the material as a result from South America? And if you do you have any sense for timing yet as to when you may get it?
Well, we can't say for the timing, and actually timing isn't an issue here. And to answer the question, yes, we want to get the material, but we don't need it as such, but we want to get it to test that certain resource. And that's because, and we're very confident that it worked with our process. And if it works as we think it do, that could be a good catalyst for that material and for the processing plants that will be built based on working that material. So then we have a new client base that would be quite large that could use our technology by using that material. And that goes basically for all material in the world that we can take. So once we get, properly ongoing, and this COVID thing has, of course, delayed a lot of things, unfortunately.
Sure.
We can envisage that basically we get materials from lithium mines all over the world. They run through the test, which at that time will be a completely non-process. And we're hoping that once we've done our testings on the iconic material and the Quebec material, everything else that comes is more or less a formality. How does that material react to our process? And if it does, yes, then we have a saleable product, which is our technology.
Next question. Sorry, Enrico, did you want to add to that? Please go ahead.
Add one brief thing is that every ore is slightly different. So when you're designing a plant, if you've tested multiple ores, you know if you have to change something or add a piece to give your client flexibility also, because they may also blend in other resources. So by doing that, you're being very professional and systematic, that you check off all the boxes. You can say, these types of ores, you need this. These types of ores, you need this. And it's very easy to address things for clients.
Takes a little longer, but more comprehensive at the end of the day.
Exactly. And then you're not discovering you needed one little piece in between to a technology island that you should have known if you had done the test.
Great. That's awesome, Enrico. Next set of questions comes from Kirsten. First one is, and each one is about 3-4 lines, so bear with me. I'm going to read through. Based on previous news and comments, I was of the impression that there will be most likely be more than one patent for stage 1 and additional patents for the next steps of the extraction and purification process. Recently, the scope of the provisional patent applications have been extended to cover additional topics. Question is, I'd like to know if St. George's has made any new or additional discoveries that will result in additional patent applications, and if so, how far along are you in the process of patent filing? Great question.
Yeah, I'll take this. You can do the debate of breaking up each technology island as a separate patent, or you can say everything's all encompassing for the process and it covers all the different ores, the concentrating methods, the leaching methods, the purification methods, right down to lithium metal, and it's all organized. I'm not sure that's really a valid debate to say I have 20 patents and George has 1.
Right.
If George's patent covers everything, then he's got it all. So it doesn't matter how many patents you have. And it's the same as saying Bill has 5, right? What we're doing is we're not worrying about the number of patents. We're worrying about, does it address what we're trying to address? And is it even worth protecting? And that's the whole point of what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Enrico. Awesome. Next question from Kirsten. Again, great, quite very detailed. I got to tell you, some of the best Q&A, really putting you guys on your toes, guys. There's not much information available regarding the nickel extraction R&D with St. George and its partner, Strategic Metallurgy. May I ask to give us shareholders some additional information where we stand and what the next steps might be, as the own nickel project seems to get more attention now? Enrico mentioned in the interview with Mike Coyle that St. George's nickel projects are unique insofar that a recrystallization has occurred, which makes extraction easier and less expensive.
So
I'll let Enrico take this one.
yeah, when we were discussing that with Mike, one of the areas that we discussed was how do you recover the whole value chain, very much like lithium. So often these nickel resources come with a lot of iron. To date, most people don't actually try to recover that iron. And you'll find tailings all over the world in the nickel laterite sphere. What we've done is, instead of, you'll have different crystals. Some crystals make great nickel for what I call the high grade nickel, and someone is really trying to get me there. Let me shut it off.
No problem. Hey, that's a part of Zoom culture, right? Sometimes dog barks, sometimes the phone rings. That's all right.
Yeah, so going back to that, if you can capture the whole value chain, and then instead of fighting the different crystals, if a crystal is intertwined with, for example, a lot of iron, it's more costly in the hydrometallurgy. Why not make ferronickel, for example, with that crystal? So you might have 25% going to ferronickel and 75% going to high grade nickel. Well, what the approach we're going to be doing is, we're not going to fight the crystals. We're going to adapt the process to each stream and optimize it. And if, because the area of that region is recrystallized, we expect that we might even get some high grade iron concentrate byproducts. And that'll be the focus of those properties north of Baie-Comeau over the next 6 months. And we'll be putting out some information on that as we progress in that area.
Beautiful. Next question is kind of switching over to Bonnie Claire. As far as I know, the sediments found at Bonnie Claire are wet due to the high water table. I have difficulties understanding how the mechanical separation described by St. George works with this sediment unless they are dried beforehand to get rid of a majority of the humidity. This is also true for the described air classification to separate the fine particles which contain the majority of the lithium. Could you please elaborate on this topic?
Well, I know as you go in depth, you do reach a certain level of water, but what's at surface is quite dry. It's like a desert, and it's very amenable to different forms of separation. We've done air classification, which is common in the pigment industry for those who don't know. And that was one of the options we looked at. We've also looked at flotation. Again, because it's a dry area, we have to consider how to recirculate all our fluids and reuse them for the longest amount of time and have the least amount of losses. That's not frozen yet. We're still developing and improving on that. But if tomorrow we were 200 meters deep, for the sake of discussion, and we hit water, because of the way that the area is, nothing prevents you from taking this material, putting it, even letting it dry in advance to our needs. And if we need to, yeah, sure, we'll have to dry it. But I don't see it as a difficulty with the water thing, especially if we're going to be doing flotation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No. If you want to finish off the answer, go ahead.
So what we do is, again, we adapt to what we have. We know with air classification, we can separate 50% of the mass out, the gangue, because the lithium is in the superfines. If we want to improve on that, we're going to have to do some type of flotation. And I'm going to be clear on that, is water doesn't cut it, so we have to do it with a different medium, which I'm not going to mention right now. And that leads to helping to concentrate further. Have we frozen that yet? No. The back end, we know what we're going to do with the leach and all that, but that's a let's call it in progress, continuous improvement, and that'll be done over the next year, continued.
Let's stick with Nevada. Second last question from Kirsten. It was mentioned multiple press releases and monthly reports that sediment materials have been sourced from multiple projects in Nevada, but so far no additional development agreement has been announced or any additional information was released with regards to the sources. I assume you have signed NDAs with these companies and therefore can't disclose much. However, can you let us know how many NDAs are currently in place with regards to this?
If we're only talking about Nevada, it's actually difficult to give an exact figure because it more or less set everything off, and what do we say? The purpose of the NDA is lost.
Yeah, well, I think you can talk about all of them. Kirsten's kind of talking about what was going on in Nevada. Maybe now they want to know how many total NDAs might be in place.
Yeah. I mean, in total NDAs, well, there. To be quite honest, I haven't taken it together how many NDAs we have about our technology as such, but we can mention there that's more than 10. We can put it that way. So
yeah. What after that? The exact number really doesn't matter, right? But
no.
I mean, are you guys surprised by having that many NDAs signed, or because that tells the common person like me, and that's why maybe you guys can add some color here that there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, there is. And everywhere we have come and explained our technology, or even when people have approached us and asked us about it, it usually ends up in an NDA because people are interested to look further and stick with us and see how it all processes and supply us with material. So yes, people buy the concept. And this is all industrial professional people, and they know what they're talking about, and they understand, and they can see the advance in what we have.
Kind of dovetailing into that, guys. Falky89 asked, so it's kind of dovetailing into this. They want to know the gravity, I guess. Did or does St. George have are having contacts with big players in the lithium industry regarding the technology? Or even better, are there promising prospects? So I guess what Falky's really asking is, within those NDAs, how many of those are really big boys? And I'm not sure you can even answer that, but I don't know. You guys tell me.
Well, of course, we can't answer the question. However, we can say that that we have contacts in the industry for sure, but we can't really say that we're in. It's a tricky question which we basically can't answer, but we can say we have contact with big people in this industry, and then it's a definition of what is big and what is not.
Bottom line is, it's easy to say that these NDAs aren't being signed with George, and obviously they're very serious. Suffice it to say, hey, Enrico, that these NDAs are being signed with very serious parties.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw another thing out there. It's not just with Nevada; it's international, right? So it's global, and we're looking at resources globally that fall into the solid category. So that's clay or hard rock, and that's the focus.
And also, it's worth on that to add that we're not only in discussions with mining owners as such. We're also in discussions with parties that want to build a lithium processing plant, regardless of the mine. So it's not always the mine that builds the plant.
Right.
So we are in active discussions with large people. And when you go into because he asked if it's large, building a lithium plant is large. Period. So. Yeah. Yes.
Bottom line for Falky,
to people, it's
for all the shareholders and for even shareholders like me, you're talking to very serious parties. That's I think we can easily conclude that, and that's great news.
Yep.
That's amazing news because anytime a company has new technology, new processing, you don't know if it's just a company talking its book, right? But when you have NDAs signed with more than 10, that's all we can describe it as now, and those 10 don't include George and insignificant people in the space. When you talk about significant parties, then that's all you need to know about the level of interest in the company's technology. Last question is regarding some research grants. Kirsten asked, in the press release from July, you disclosed that St. George has agreed to take over from a Quebec-based industrial partner a Quebec government research grant that will be used towards the lithium and nickel initiative research with Coalia. Any chance to give us more details with regards to the size of the grant, any terms that this grant comes with?
I don't know if you want to answer this, Bill, but I'll start. It's not completely taken over. It's a partial. It's synergistic because one of the reasons is that we already discussed the nitrate byproduct, and this other group doesn't need as much R&D left for their processing, and they're in the phosphates. And what happens is the waste stream of nitrates, when you're doing the test work for lithium, what are you going to do with it? Normally you would throw it away. And the miner making his concentrates, what is he going to do with all those products after he's proven his process? Well, instead of throwing it away, take the two waste streams and start doing value-added fertilizer on the side. So it was synergistic in that regard. I'm not going to go into the details of the size of the grant, other than that it's at cost. They can only charge us their actual costs. So there's no markups, a very efficient group that does the work. And, you know, I can't say because the other company is private, and I'm not sure how much they want said about their
Right.
their work, but it's an official grant. What's important is it's going to cost St. George a lot less money than they had ever planned on spending originally.
And I can add to it. It also working with CTMP or Coalia, as they're called today, has been an absolute success with St. George, and this will cover the cost for quite a period of time. And it will also give Enrico and the team possibility maybe to step a little bit outside the predicted box and do more tests that we would maybe not do if it wasn't for the grant. So it's a really good thing.
Gentlemen, that concludes the question part, the shareholder Q&A part. So I'm going to leave Enrico, most likely last comments to you. What's the takeaway here for shareholders of St. George with respect to, you know, the big picture and how happy you are with the progress, or, you know, where we are with respect to the company's lithium processing technology? What's the 30,000-foot takeaway for everyone?
So the 30,000 takeaway. First, I want to temper expectations, because they call it research and development for a reason, right? Because you don't have all the answers today. Well, what is really nice now today, which is something everybody can take away, is that we've really organized ourselves with a spectrum of suppliers, be it the equipment world, be it the labs, and we're really well organized and structured to get to the finish line. And over the next year, I expect that we will have progressed substantially. And it's an exciting time, because we really have all the partners lined up. And what we've done is each one is doing what they do best. Some things we're keeping with closer to hand, or we're splitting the work up so the secrets aren't always out there, more as a cautionary approach, and also more to use each group's expertise. Instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, you're good at this, do that, you're good at this, do that, and you're good at this, do that. And then we're the integrator, and then we do the other tests in between. Of course, all of that will be consolidated where the pilot plant is going to be eventually. And that's where you also develop your operating and know-how transfer team, because they learn them while doing the work. Now they're ready to help the clients. So the strategy and the methodology of all of that is well organized today, and which is not always common for what I call a junior starting out. We've really organized who can do what, where, who the equipment partner suppliers can be, and we will be progressing with them very closely in the next stages.
Vil, any last words to you, or is Enrico summed it up perfectly right
Well,
there?
he summarized it quite well. Maybe my only comment is that I'm very pleased with what we did when we formed a special subsidiary about the metallurgy technology. I think it was a smart move, and so it can be more focused there. So it's not what do I say, all over the place with St. George's and its mining activities. So we're just showing the market that we're really serious and focused on what we're doing.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for taking the time. You provided great overview, amazing answers to the questions posed by the shareholders. And again, I want to thank the shareholders for taking the time to really post some amazing questions here. That was fantastic. And thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good.
That concludes this segment of the St. George's Beyond the AGM, the segment related to the company's lithium processing technology. Stay tuned for the next segments. Have a great day.